Now, I think overall I'm gonna give this a 4-star duology review. I gave 4 stars to the first book and 4 stars to the second book. What I love about this series was that it was a very different type of fantasy story. It was based on 1001 Arabian Nights, and the setting is unlike any other fantasy setting that I've read about. I love the descriptions of the setting. I think the world building was done really well in this book. As most fantasy books tend to have a good world building, I think this one was excellent. I entirely wanted to be in this setting. The palace that was described was absolutely beautiful. The food that they talked about made me hungry. I wanted to wear the clothes they wore, and I am not a person who really likes the desert. I like trees and mountains and forests, but the way that Renee described the deserts made me just want to see it from her eyes. I loved the descriptions of this book, and I think it set a beautiful, magical kind of backdrop to the story. I also really loved how the element of storytelling was such a part of this book. Countless times we see the characters telling stories to each other, short little stories that have a big meaning to them, and I just love how those stories kind of tied into the bigger picture and they were always relevant to what was happening at the time. I guess I should give a brief synopsis of this duology. So there is this young boy prince, and he takes brides. Every time he takes a bride, they end up dead the next morning. And so our main character, Shazi, her best friend had married this prince, and of course she, like all the other brides, had ended up dead the next day. Well, Shazi wasn't going to stand for that, so she married the boy prince with the intention of killing him, but along the way find out all this other stuff, which you'll find about when you read it, but it just makes it for a much more interesting read, I'll put it that way. I also really love that this is a duology. It's not a long series, it's not a trilogy even, it's just 2 books. It's very easy to manage. The writing is written in a very captivating kind of way. Like I mentioned before, just the descriptions of the setting were so beautifully done. I wanted to stay immersed in this world and I wanted to keep reading. And although I would say it was not a fast-paced book by any means, it was still something that held my attention. So it was more of a slow-paced fantasy read than I think you would find, but it wasn't also a high fantasy read, so it was kind of somewhere in the middle. Honestly, the writing was just so beautiful. I'm gonna have to read other books that this author puts out because I hadn't even heard of this author before this series. I don't know if this was like her debut novel set, I'm not really sure, but if you know if she's written anything else, please let me know. So if you have been thinking about picking up this duology, I highly encourage you to do so. It's just a very quick and enjoyable read, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna love it. And if you've read it, let me know what you thought in the comments below. Thanks for watching and happy reading.